Hey guys, welcome to this channel where we introduce many different kinds of historical books and analyze them one by one. So the book we're going to talk about today is 1920, The Year That Made the Decade Roll by Eric Burns, who made a lot of arguments on the year 1920. I hope you guys learn more about the books and enjoy today's video. Okay guys, so before we get into this book, we need to know some historical background of the book. Let's talk about 1920 the year first. So just a few years ago, the well-known war that caused a disaster across continents just ended, which caused a large amount of loss in population and economy. And this war is World War I. And as the year passed, more reformation has been introduced to the society, such as industrialization and political reform. This information all led us to an idea that 1920 might be a big year around the world and especially in America. Now, let's come back to the book. Eric Burns suggests that 1920 wasn't just a year of recovery after the war. It was a year that set up the stage for the events Roaring Twenties. Instead of just listing out different events, Burns takes a perspective of how social, political, and cultural changes all came together in that specific year. Now think about what I'm about to say. Women finally gained the right to vote with the publish of the 19th Amendment. Prohibition began with the announce of Volstead Act. The invention of radio started becoming really popular, and jazz music became many people's favorite choice. And the most craziest part is that what I just mentioned all happened in the same year. Burns takes a deep research into these events, explained how they developed, how they impact the whole society, and how they lead to the crazy energy in 1920s. He even breaks the year down into month by month to show details of how everything was connected. One of the most interesting thing about his approach is the way he breaks the book down month by month. This type of structure shows that Burns does not just describe events, but also build on each other and gain momentum throughout the year. This structure highlights some of the connections that might be ignored, making his arguments more convincing to the readers. Now, let's bring the topic into Burns' main argument in the book. He suggests that 1920 was the key year that in order exploded the Roaring Twenties. To learn if his argument is strong enough or not, we need to look at the evidence he provides and how well he explains it. Burns supports his points with a lot of original sources like newspaper articles, old records, personal letters, and photos. These evidence give us a perspective of what people were experiencing at that period of time. For example, the editorials he cited from 1920 represent both the excitement and fear about women voting for the first time, and show how some of the ideas of the country were divided. By using these types of primary resources, Burns strengthened more on his statement and made it reliable. Overall, Burns fully represents the major events in 1920 and how they were connected with each other. For example, He shows how women's rights to vote and prohibition were not separate with each other. On the contrary, they affected with each other. And with the use on primary resources, Burns helped his arguments to gain large amounts of credibility by providing us the first-hand look at history. However, one of the weak points is that Burns might have focused too much on the year 1920 and did not look at the bigger angle. Although I know that 1920 was an important year, but some people might use this as a point to argue with the economic boom that came later in the decade was as well as a key. Other historians, such as Kenneth Galbraith, argue against his statement that the rise of the consumption and financial speculation occurred in the later decade play as a more significant role in 1920s than just a single year, 1920. With a comparison between Burns and this would give a better and larger understanding for the readers. Also, some parts of his argument could also be explained more. For example, as he mentions how prohibition led to organized crime, he did not explore more about the border of the economic effects, while Burns discusses the social results of the prohibition. Some of the economic historians take a note on the significant decline in federal tax revenue and led to the decrease of economic. With this added to his statement, the whole thing would be stronger. Even with these small issues, Burns still does a great job on researching and telling out facts that represent why the year 1920 was such an important year. He also puts everything together and makes a solid case on why this year was a turning point in shaping the American we know today. Not only did these events define the decade, but also takes a further move on setting up the stage for the following years of 20th century. Things such as women's voting helped the push on gender equality, and prohibition's failure helped the influence on government regulation and personal freedoms. Thanks for you guys watching, and I hope you see you next time. Goodbye.